My name is Robert, and I'm thrilled to be able to talk to you about a few things. It's always a little bit of a no-pressure situation coming after the mill and frame store. You know, kind of like you have 100 and 500 people working on something, whereas with the projects I'll be showing, it's between 1 and 5 people. So hopefully this will give you some inspiration also if you're a smaller scale studio or a freelancer or just an aspiring artist to do some stuff, because you don't have to be big to do big things. So without further ado, here's the show reel from the last few projects. Thank you. So I just remembered, I'm from Munich, so my club is FC Bayern Munich, so we have a lot of Serbian players like Vladimir Lucic and so on. So I guess someone, if knows basketball, you know, any basketball fans here? I don't see anything. Nice. So what will you learn today? It's about helping, okay? So just about, like this poor girl, you know, has issues with the 2 bottles, and a young fellow comes along and helps her. It's just an act of kindness, you know? So, you know, it's not going to be just like that. So I'm just trying to give you a few things. I'm even going to go into the software, if time allows, to show you a few clicks and tips and things that might help you. It's going to be 3 projects I'm going to talk about. I do mostly motion graphics design, so that's what I learned, that's what I studied, that's what I love. But I'm trying to move in also more into opening title design, because it's a mix of design and film and visual effects. You can do everything. It's almost like a contained little mini movie. Not necessarily opening titles today, but a motion design project, a little short film that is more like a commercial for a social cause, and something about a feature film I've worked on recently. So let's get started with the first project, which is the making of the Elgato Gaming brand design. And Elgato is a tech company based in Munich, and they do fantastic little devices that will help you to be faster at work, or use things for gaming, like game capture cards, all these sort of tech things. And recently they relaunched their brand, so they had a new icon, a new logo, a whole new brand design, and they approached me to create something that would be similar to a TV show package, where we're using TV like an opener, a closer, a bumper, intro, outro. And when I approach this project, I get the brand redesign infos, and this look like this. It's like a dark black, dark black. Can be darker than black? A dark blue background. Some shapes that actually should form a play icon. And this is what I received basically. And they asked me to come up with something that will communicate this idea as for an intro. And I wasn't sure if I really have to pick up these shapes, because I didn't quite know what to do with them. And very quickly, I created mood videos for them. They say fail fast and fail early, so that you eliminate this 625 versions, So that's why I tried to fail fast. So these were all done within a day or two. I'm not sure, it's been a while, but like really less than a day for each one of those. And I just want to quickly play them. I've never shown these publicly, so they're really rough, but they show you the direction they could go to. Okay, so that was number 1. That's number 2. And that's number 3. Just very subtle and completely different styles. I just wanted to get a feel for what they want. And they said no to all 3 of them, which is great because I'm kind of like, okay, what can I do? And they said, yeah, maybe a mix of the first one with the energy because it's like gaming and energy, and they wanted to have something that's over-the-top effects heavy, and but also use the shapes that they established so nicely. So I thought, okay, let's go with the shapes, and I'm going to show you that right away now in Cinema 4D. Who's using Cinema 4D? Let me see your hands. Woo, nice. And what's with the rest? What's wrong with you? Come on. No, it's all good. Everything that happens here stays here, okay? So we're all friends. All right, Cinema 4D is my tool of choice. It's fantastic to do things really fast, and the way I created this was I put a background image of the design in the background, and then I started just to model really, really rough shapes. And there's nothing really fancy about this one. It's just about making the timing nice and letting things come in nicely. It's super eased, and it's at 60 frames per second, so that's why you have this very smooth motion. But just a few things I wanted to point out for this particular project is that everything in the design was designed in this isometric view. Okay, so you can't really use a perspective view. And one thing I noticed, and I didn't know this before, was you can change the camera projection in Cinema 4D from perspective to parallel. So you don't have to use a super long lens to achieve a similar effect, but instead you just change it to parallel. And then the other thing is, I'm lazy, okay? So I admit it, all right? Everyone knows I'm lazy. But at the same time, one of my teachers in design school said, it's okay to be lazy as long as you're smart. So how can you combine being lazy with being smart? Essentially, it comes down to being time effective. And we all know what is time? Oh, thank you. It took a while. But yeah, of course, time is money. And you want to save time and you want to save money. That's why I hate rendering. I hate waiting on renders. And so when I saw the designs, let me actually show you a couple of the designs. I think let me just go back. When I saw the design, I realized that they always have a little drop shadow in the background. I don't know if you remember that from the first couple of slides. So if I just push render here, you will see it will render in about, I don't know, 2 seconds. So it's really fast. So I didn't use any GI or anything fancy. But how can I get those shadows here? Well, the trick was just to go in and use ambient occlusion. And I set up the distance to a higher maximum ray length. Okay, so if I leave it at 100, which is the default, and I render it, you will see that there's no shadow from this bright blue to the dark blue, only from this one, only where it's really in close proximity. But again, I wanted to avoid rendering shadows. I just wanted to have ambient occlusion. So let's go maybe 450 centimeters. So that's about the distance that these two shapes have. And when I render that, you will see that this will give you this little shadow, and it renders in 2 seconds at 60 frames per second at 4K. I didn't want to wait too long because why? We all know clients, okay? Clients are the ones that come back to you on a Friday afternoon and they say, I quite like it, but get away with that green smoke. You know? So you don't want that. Actually, maybe you cannot change it, but you want to be flexible and you need to be able to react quickly to client requests and changes, and that's why I wanted to be very flexible in terms of how long this will render. And another little tip, again, if I get out of this view, you will see how this will look like. So it's nothing really crazy. It's just the shapes moving, and the background is also moving. So basically, everything that is gray is transparent. Everything that is blue is not transparent. So this allowed me to create an alpha channel that will help me to do a proper bumper, to have some footage behind it, so to have an edit go from one footage element to another. And here's a rundown of how that looks. You have to make the sound effects for these, okay? So there's no sound effects, but you can imagine like bass and all this nice stuff. They didn't want sound effects for that, so yeah. And that's basically it. So very subtle, very streamlined, straightforward, but still tried to use as many things that I could do to help this. And as usually with projects that are dear to your heart and you put your heart and soul into and the client loves it, your work is your best advertisement for future work. So they loved it, and just after this project was finished, they came back to us and said, hey, let's work on a product release trailer for a product that's called Streamdeck Mini. And to give credit, I've been working on this one with two of my friends that I'm sharing the studio with Max Iglesias and Chana Mirak. And what do you get from the client before the project starts? So this is like an in-depth from 0 to 100 how the project went. We get this, we get an image, and then we get the product eventually. We get, thankfully, CAD data, so we don't have to model this. But then they say, all right, think about something. We don't really have a brief. We have a few things you want us to say, but other than that, it's open. And you get images like this, and this image actually inspired us to use a combination of this image and the isometric design to come up with something. In case you're wondering what this device does, it's like a little extra keyboard that has illuminated displays, and you can program them, not just for games, but also for tools like Photoshop and After Effects and Cinema 4D for actual shortcuts, which is pretty cool. So here's our original concept board that we did. You will see that we have a few rough renderings, and the idea was to use this isometric view and to plant everything around this view. Also, we have a few rough renders just to show them the product, because the client always wants to see the product and nice and big, and so that's why we included that as well, just to give them a little bit of, oh yeah, this is how it will look like in CG. A lot of dense depth of field, a very shallow depth of field. I like to photograph a lot in my spare time, and I always like to be really close so you can really focus on a certain area. You can direct the attention of the viewer. And I would call it bokeh porn. So this is how this would look like, so you know exactly where to watch. So we have some couple of text elements explaining what will happen, how long this will be, how we envision everything. Of course, not everything is fully rendered, but showing, okay, this could be how the software works, explaining. And then we made an animatic to send off the client. Again, fail fast and fail early if possible. Yeah, I think we took the music from Audiojungle, I'm not sure, but yeah, we purchased it. But this is also a thing that we use sometimes. We try to find music from different sources. Ideally, you work with a composer and he will compose music, but for the given budget, it was just not possible. So we had to go with Audiojungle. Sometimes you also use Epidemic sound, but for this one, we went with this particular one. And this is a next, like an advanced version where we actually show some of the things, particularly from the user interface. Okay, so let me show you one more thing, because I have 2 minutes more than I hoped I have. So, for those that use Cinema 4D, who's using After Effects in general? Nice. It's my favorite tool. I came from After Effects and learned Cinema 4D afterwards. They work really well together. And let me show you something here. So first, let's go to this shot here. So we rendered this with Octane, and here's the setup. It's without textures. And one thing that I would like to point out for this one is, again, because we were short on time, short on budget, but still we wanted to do something nice. And in total, I think it's over a minute long. And to save render time, we decided on having a still in some of the renders. Okay, so whenever the product is not moving, it's just a still. And everything that is moving around it is done in After Effects because it's just way faster. So whenever the product is turning, it's rendered. And then again, we have a still for, I don't know, 400 frames or something like this. So this is how we managed the render efficiency, hopefully quite clever. But there's another thing I would like to point out, and that is being able to drag and drop Cinema 4D files into After Effects. I don't know who knew this. It's been there for a few years now. So there's a very strong connection with Cinema 4D and After Effects, and it's called Sceneware. So I can drag and drop the native Cinema 4D file, and I can open it up in After Effects, and I can scrub through that. Okay, I would not recommend rendering it. Technically, you can, but again, this will take some time, and since we use Octane, this wouldn't work anyway. But there's a few things I would like to show you. So depends on if you know it or not. This might blow your mind. There's one thing that you can do is extract. So when you click on extract, this will extract all the camera and the light data and all the null object data that we have here. So for example, I can have the null object that I have here. I have all the several lights. I can type something new. Let's type push the button. I'm super creative today. I mean, look, studied for 4 years, and he writes push the button. And now it's gone. So why is it gone? I have to hold down Shift and parent this to this one, and then I can, let's rotate that around, and this by 180, and then I can just move it, oops. I move it over here. Now I have it. Okay. So just like that. And whenever I play it back, you will see that it will use the existing camera data, and everything is within this world. So whenever the client, obviously the client will not change the product, hopefully. So the product is more or less safe. So the most things he would probably change is, okay, we need this icon, or instead of push the button, we need to say hammer the button. Then we can say, all right, this will take about 3 days to do because it's 3D. And then you go into After Effects and fix it like in a minute. So, but don't tell the client, okay? But this is how you can work efficiently and cleverly using the tools that you have at hand. And before going to the next project, I'd like to play you the final trailer. The music is a little bit over the top, but hey, it's for gamers, so enjoy. Evolve your content. Available now. Thank you. All right, project number 2. Let it fly. Ever since having kids, I have 2. I'm struggling sometimes with the work that we do. For example, like with this commercial for just a product. Not that, I mean, it's a great product, but it's just like a commercial for a product. It doesn't really have a cultural, social, or any other impact. And I'm figuring out and trying to find ways and things on how you could maybe do things that have better impact. And when this project came along, it was for a social cause, which is great. And it's always nice to do those things. Just imagine all the power that we have creatively, render power, and what are we doing? You know, we're rendering, I don't know, boxes. So the idea for this project was, it's based on a social idea for the city of Munich. Dense city, very little space for kids to play outside. There's really no place to create new basketball grounds or soccer fields. So they had this idea of this social center, this house, this greenhouse in the middle, to get rid of the roof, basically to flatten the roof, get away with the roof, and to put a soccer field on the roof, obviously caged, so that the kids are not falling out. But, you know, I was just asking, so we'll be caged. I mean, just to know. Yeah, we'll be caged. So they came to me via NHB Studios and asked me to design the soccer field that should be planted on that, and it should be flying in, like from the Pixar movie Up, which is one of my favorite movies. So I had to do all the concept art. I'm not a concept artist, and so I just did a few rough sketches on my iPad, just something to envision and send to the client if that would be all right. So the idea was, should we have 4 balloon stacks on each side, or should it be maybe 6? Should it be hanging like a little cloth, or should it be stiff like a little desk? And all these sketches help to get to a result that, that hopefully would work. And then I went to actually doing it into Cinema 4D, and I'm not the best artist in Cinema 4D, to be fair, so I was looking, again, because I'm lazy, I was looking, okay, what is available? Looked into tutorials, and how can I build this? And then I found this balloon rig on Vimeo from this guy called Crud Monster. So whatever his real name is, I couldn't find out, but he has this free rig available, and I used that rig just to give it a starting point, and also a very nice guy, Marcel Langner, helped me with the advanced rigging of this. But let me just quickly show you how this will actually look like in Cinema 4D. Because this allowed me basically just to go ahead and be very flexible with this. So it's a dynamic rig, and you can take that and you can just move it around, and it's completely dynamic, and this moves more or less in real time. And I can go in and let me see if I can find that. So you can basically change the amounts of balloons that you want to have. And basically what I did is just adding, I think about, was it 125 balloons for this one? And with a random effector, you can just say every balloon should have a different color. And then you just add it on those 4 edges of the playing field. And speaking of the playing field, this is what I had in C4D. Again, this was sent off to the client. Don't mind the edges. This was not fixed yet, UV-wise. But this was, again, something like, should it look like this? Should it have overlap? Should it look like a flying carpet from Aladdin? Or what do you want? And this is the version with 6 attachment points. They didn't want that, so they wanted only 4, which is fine to me. It looks a bit more elegant. And let me show you what technique I used for this. Again, not from scratch, but hopefully this will give you an idea of how you can. The first talk mentioned thinking outside of the box, which is difficult, and I agree. But for this, I tried to think outside of the box truly, because I remembered, okay, this could be difficult to model. I mean, not that it's difficult to model the shape per se, but to make it look natural. I didn't have much time for this one, so I tried to be fast. So that's why I thought about Cinema 4D cloth. So basically, all I have is just a plane, it's subdivided, and then I selected 4 edges, okay? So 4 points, 4 polygon points, and I attach those polygon points to null objects. And then you can define that as a cloth object with gravity. And all you have to do is press play, and this thing will then fall down. And you can set up all the things like elasticity and how much mass it should have, how it should be more like rubber, should be more like, I don't know, like a heavy piece of cloth. And you can change all those parameters, and it's a lot of fun to play with. Watch this. If I put in 90, what will happen? Let me just reset it. I think this thing is totally flexible, like a rubber thing. And if you put in 10, this thing is different. And if you put in, I don't know, bounce and friction, I mean, it's all those things that you can do. It's pretty crazy. And also, you can use tear, so it will tear apart. Of course, that was not desired by the client. But this was my way of going forward. So very quickly, I realized that this was the way, and then they said, okay, maybe we can have some balloons on the sideline. So all I had to do is using the MoGraph tool with a cloner and a selection. So I selected a few polygons where I wanted to have the balloons basically grow out. And if they said, no, there's too many, I could just erase the polygons, the balloons would be gone. If they want to have more, I just paint more selections onto it, and then I have more balloons. And this is a preview, so this is a comp with the roof flattened, just a preview on how it could look with the balloons landing on that roof. And there were several shots they wanted to have. They wanted to have the Allianz Arena, the famous soccer stadium, where it will be taken out from, so it originates from the soccer field. We'll be flying over Munich. Everyone is looking like, wow, look, a flying soccer field. And then we'll land on that. And this is to raise awareness for people as a charity project, to go and fund this, to help to support this project in any way they can, so that kids have a new playground on the roof over Munich, which is a beautiful idea, I think. And here's the final film. It features a German song, so I'm not sure how much you will understand, but it basically says, let it fly, let your dreams fly, let's make it happen together. So here it is.
Yeah. Hier unten wird es eng.
Manchmal will ich nur hier raus.
Dahin, wo mich niemand kennt.
Wollt schon immer hoch hinaus.
Aber wohin soll ich rennen?
In meinem Viertel wird es laut.
Alle drängen auf die Straße.
Glaub, es wird wieder gebaut.
Es sieht wirklich schwierig aus, doch ist leichter als du denkst.
Alles ist beweglich, wenn du weißt, woran es hängt.
Alles spricht dagegen, Bürokratie und die Physik.
Na dann gerade deswegen.
Hummelprinzip.
Wir bewegen den Boden der Tatsachen. Schau nach oben,
Da kommt was geflogen.
du stehst schon im Schlagschatten.
Lass uns Platz machen.
Für die depperten Ideen.
Wer hat dir den Dachschaden? Komm, wir reparieren dir den.
Nur wer sich Gedanken macht, kann ein Luftschloss bauen.
Doch nur wer auch mit anpackt, baut Muskeln auf.
Schau, in der ganzen Stadt Schlussverkauf. Und alles muss rauf.
Lass es fliegen, komm, wir beamen uns hoch. Hier haben wir unseren Frieden, komm zu Besuch. Lass es fliegen, komm, wir beamen uns hoch. Hier haben wir unseren Frieden, komm zu Besuch.
Zeit für frischen Wind, bevor wir bleiben, wo wir sind. Komm, lass es fliegen. Es ist alles hinzukriegen. Es ist Zeit für mehr Ideen, um Dinge anders anzusehen. Komm, lass es fliegen. Lass es fliegen, fliegen, fliegen.
And there's my logo. Wow, look at that. Thank you. So that was a lot of fun. And again, it's a good feeling to do something for a good cause. I have a 1-minute making of if you want to see that. Do you want to see that? Yeah, it's a little bit of what I said, but with music, so it's actually nice.
Es sieht wirklich schwierig aus, doch ist leichter als du denkst.
Alles ist beweglich, wenn du weißt, woran es hängt.
Alles spricht dagegen, Bürokratie und die Physik.
Na dann gerade deswegen.
Hummelprinzip.
Wir bewegen den Boden der Tatsachen. Schau nach oben,
Da kommt was geflogen.
du stehst schon im Schlagschatten.
Lass uns Platz machen.
Für die depperten Ideen.
Wer hat dir den Dachschaden? Komm, wir reparieren dir den.
Nur wer sich Gedanken macht, kann ein Luftschloss bauen.
Doch nur wer auch mit anpackt, baut Muskeln auf.
Schau, in der ganzen Stadt Schlussverkauf. Und alles muss rauf.
Lass es fliegen, komm, wir beamen uns hoch. Hier haben wir unseren Frieden, komm zu Besuch. Lass es fliegen, komm, wir beamen uns hoch. Hier haben wir unseren Frieden, komm zu Besuch.
Zeit für frischen Wind, bevor wir bleiben, wo wir sind. Komm, lass es fliegen. Es ist alles.
All right. So, from helping kids and building playgrounds to blowing stuff up. It's a bit of a change. Hopefully, and thankfully, just in the movies, because I have a few ethical things that would not work for tobacco commercials or military commercials. So this looks very military-like, but it's a freaking feature film, so that's all right if it's fiction. And it's a thriller, and it's called Blame Game. And when I was asked to work on that from the same studio, actually, that gave me this project with the balloons, NHB Studios, a friend of mine is the visual effects supervisor. And he knew that I desperately wanted to do something with features. And the genre of action thrillers and spy thrillers, you know, you think of things like James Bond and Bourne Identity and Homeland, and I really like these. But this movie was nothing like it. It's not like action and shooting and everyone is, you know, just the good guys survive and everything is haha, and at the end you have a happy end and James Bond gets the girl and kisses him, her, or him. And that's not going to happen. Not in this movie. It's a very gritty, dark movie. It's about spies. So when I was asked, want to work on that, I said yes. Okay, that was my reaction. It's a movie about a serious topic. So basically, it's about how the German intelligence works with the CIA together, how they get information legally or illegally out of people that will then trigger a drone strike in other countries, which will then trigger a whole lot of different shit that goes on, which is actually, unfortunately, really happening. It's a really terrible thing, and this movie addresses this, not in a fun way, not in a, oh, this is whatever it is. It addresses it in a very realistic and gritty way, and that's why I thought it's great to work on that. And of course, I like action movies, so yeah, it has a good message. So they asked me, can you do opening titles, CG planes, a CG drone, and the UI graphics for the drone? So that was quite a lot. So mostly I did all this alone with just a little outside help. And unfortunately, we won't have time to talk about all these 4 topics in full. But I tried to have the opening titles very subtle, have a font that would represent something that is German, you know, like there's like this German DIN font. Typography in Germany have a very big history and culture, so I used the font that was specifically designed for industrial things, so that will represent in the movie. The German title is Das Ende der Wahrheit. The English title is Blame Game. It will come out on Blu-ray and on demand, I think, this month. It was in the movies in May. And yeah, so that was fun to do, but I would like to focus on a few things, which is mainly the drone and, of course, the planes. And here's a little breakdown reel of how that looks. So yeah, that was it. And we interrupt this program for a short commercial break. Epidemic Sound. I was contacted by them because I signed up for a creator subscription, which is like really cheap because I have a YouTube channel that will also feature a lot of tutorials and stuff, and there's also a talk that is just 1 hour about this project. If you want to, you can check it out on my channel. But also, if you want to have a 30 days free creator trial, they have awesome music. So, you know, make a photo of that link, check it out. It's really nice. It doesn't cost you anything. So why not share this with you guys? So back to our regularly scheduled program. Let's talk about the CG plane. So the Trans-L C160 is the German, you know, standard issue transport cargo plane. And they had real ones in the movie, and of course they also didn't have a few in other shots because the Air Force wasn't available all the time. So I did a lot of research on how these things look. I also did a lot of research on how the drones look and bombs and explosions for weeks. So I pretty much screwed up my Google search history. I don't know, I think I raised a couple of red flags, so I was a little bit afraid. Looking out the window if a black van will stop. Why is this guy looking for this stuff? But for me, in my philosophy, it's important to understand what you want to create or recreate. I always tend to say on talks, you have to smell the product or the whatever you do, you have to taste it, you have to touch it, you have to see it, you have to really to observe it, to understand it fully, to really put it into your brain so that you can replicate what is real. And so of course I did a lot of research on this plane and how this looks. This is some reference photos that were shot on set. So I tried to recreate it to every little detail. Even the flight squadron icon or logo is the same. The camouflage pattern is the same, so everything is more or less matching. And then they supplied me with a base model of the plane, but I had to add a lot of detail to that, like antennas and little mini wings, the textures completely redone, and also this little ramp that you see on the back, which I mean, it looks ridiculously cheap if you look really closely. I mean, you will see that it's actually just a polygon selection that I rotated down, and the poles are just some cylinders. So there's not a lot of detail, but it works because the way the shot is set up, you will not see into the plane, so why agonize about details that no one's going to see anyway? So again, I try to be effective and limit the amount of time that you spend on this, and also the amount of money, of course, that you will spend doing that. So this is what you get from the director, what we want. Okay, so this is like the bird's eye view. This is how the shot should look like. It should be in the background. We didn't have the real plane, but can you insert the plane there? So this is how it looks. And this is when I took it to C4D. And actually, let me show you that directly in Cinema 4D, because I think it's just nice to see. It's a lockdown camera, so there's no parallax movement, which is good and also bad. Why is it good? Because you just have one frame. Okay, you don't have to render. I mean, technically you can render out multiple frames, but it's just one frame. But this will also mean that you cannot do motion tracking. Okay, so you cannot just hit track motion and this will recreate the camera motion based on what is close and what is far. But there's a nice tool in Cinema 4D which is called the Camera Calibrator. Okay, so this is the tag for that, the Camera Calibrator. It's similar to what you can do in Photoshop with Vanishing Point. Anyone use Vanishing Point before? Yeah? So cool, because you can define rectangular shapes that will define the perspective. So you as a human being, as a smart, intelligent human being, see what perspective is. And you have to help the stupid computer to realize, okay, so perspective is going this way, so the central point is more to the left or more to the right. So this is what you can do here. So actually you have to add a few rectangles. So you see I have one here, I have one here, I have one here. And I did one reference because I knew the actor is about 180, so 1 meter 80. And then it will show me that this is the central point. So whatever I can do now is, if I drop in a cube, this cube will move perspectively in the correct way, which is fantastic because now I can just add in the Trans-L cargo plane right away. And you know, you send this to the client, and the client goes like, "Woo, I like that. Can we add a second one?" And I go like, "Come on, I give you the finger, you know, and you just rip your arm." Anyone had that before? You just give them one, and then they're like, "Oh, can I have more?" And I said, "Yeah, this is going to cost you." And then I did this. It's just copying and pasting. Kidding aside, of course, it's very easy because as soon as you have the perspective, you can just add that stuff in, and it's very straightforward. And I can also show you the plane. It's also very, it's quite detailed, but most of the detail is coming from the actual textures that I have applied. So how does that look like then? Well, you just put it in. This is the lighting reference that we have, chrome ball and a gray ball. Then my friend Daniel created an HDR sky for me because we didn't have HDR images, unfortunately, from the shoot. And then you just pop it in, add some color grading. And then this shot happened, and they went like, yeah, you know, there's a shot where it's a little bit closer, and how close is it? And then, yeah, very close. I'm like, okay. So I had to rework some of the details, add some bump to make it look more realistic. But I think it's holding up okay. And this was the most difficult one because this features a lens flare that is going over the tail wing. And this needed a lot of comp. All the compositing was done in After Effects, adding all the blurs and every imperfection. It's funny because with renders, you always have to make them, like you try to make them beautiful, and then in comp, you just fuck it up just to make it look nice again. You know, so you make it look worse to make it look better. Because there's no camera that is so perfect as there's like a renderer, right? So you need to blur it, you need to add grain and all these imperfections, chromatic aberrations, yeah, until it looks like this. Just briefly touch on the CG drone. I'm not gonna spend too much time on this one, but just to let you know, this was all done in After Effects, so completely no Cinema 4D. And the director wanted the very specific drone for this film. It's the Predator 1MQB, I think. And then I remembered my friend Andrew Kramer from Video Copilot had this tool that I bought. Actually, I bought it, I don't know how many years ago. And I also bought Flight Pack because I just like to support whatever is good. And this is good. And I bought Flight Pack without having any use for it. I just liked it because it was cool. And I remember there was this Predator drone in the pack. I opened it up, looked it up, there it is. I didn't have to model, didn't have to buy. All I did was recreate the textures. About 80% was recreated. Some of the lights were in wrong position. I was really looking up the frequency, how the lights are blinking, and how the rockets look like. So everything should be real as possible. And then, of course, the last thing is the user interface graphics. And then the director didn't want anything that looks out of a sci-fi movie like Avengers or Star Wars, which I would love to do. But he said, no, make it look realistic and gritty. And so, again, a lot of research went into that, tried to find out how these things look. Everything was done as shape layers with After Effects. So all in After Effects designed and created. And actually, I found out that there's more than just one. You have a pilot display, and then you have a weapons officer display. The one is green, the other is white. So you have this night vision look, which is actually not real night vision here. I just inverted it, just to fake it. Then this was all added in. All the green screens were replaced, and my animations were added in. And then, of course, it also features a full screen user interface, which looks like this, and it's fully animated. So the landscape, the actual footage is from a quadrocopter drone that is just flying over a desert, but it's just flying straight on. It's not moving left and right because it's the drone stabilizes itself. Okay, but I wanted to add a bit more dynamic movement. So what I did was I parent the horizon layer to the footage, and I moved the footage. And whenever I move the footage, the user interface will also move with it. So it's corresponding to the actual flight movement, which will give you a more dynamic look. And then last but not least, this shot that features the weapons officer that shows you the impact. And it's a very critical moment in the movie, so it had to be pretty good. And again, I use particular from Trapcode, from Red Giant, as a particle and explosion simulator. So nothing fancy. It's just it's a 3D thing, but it's actually, I mean, it's an After Effects, so it's not, you know, I mean, it's 3D, but you know how it is with particles. And I put it on my phone, and I showed it to our neighbors. And they were like, oh, that's terrible. And I went like, yeah, it is. But I built it on my computer. And they were like, what? So I did it as a test, just to see with how we are conditioned and of the terrible things we see in the news, and if they would believe that it's like a real thing, and they did. So then afterwards, I was comfortable, and I had a very good feeling about sending it off to the client, and they loved it. They took basically the first version with just a few minor changes, but this helped me to do it in a very flexible and quick turnaround. So thank you so much for listening. Thank you so much. I had a blast. It's a beautiful event. It's so nice to see so many people full of energy, wanting to do something nice. And I'm feeling really blessed to be here. So thank you, CJ, for inviting me. Do we have time for questions? It says 1 minute, but I don't know. Is it like 1 minute until questions, or is it 1 minute with questions? Oh, with questions. We can run over 2 or 3 minutes, or? What do you think? Yes, 2 questions.
Yes, 2 questions.
2 questions, cool. All right. First question.
Are you doing any coding or doing only with tools?
The question was if I do any coding or if I just work tools. I'm a creative. I don't even know what coding means. I know what coding means, but no, I don't. I hate coding. Personally, I think at one point. So when I was younger, like 20 years ago, I thought I would be able to learn everything and know everything. Someone is calling. I'm just kidding. And then I realized I will not be able to learn everything. So I will try to focus on the things that I like most and that I know best, and surround myself with people that are better in certain areas. Because only with people that know, let's say, fluid simulation or anything that I don't know anything about can help me to provide the results. So I'm not always working alone. Many times I work with friends, but still in a very small team. Second question, anyone? Yes?
The mic.
And also I'll be around, standing there. If you have any more questions, then feel free.
How long do you think it will take to learn Cinema 4D?
How long will it take to learn Cinema 4D? Okay. I can't tell you in terms of time. I know it's the program that has probably the steepest learning curve. I learned it in my last semester studying. I pushed it away until my last semester because I wanted to do an animated short film as my final thesis project. And I forced myself with this project to learn Cinema 4D. So it took me, I would say, probably 6-7 months to learn it. But I was working while I was learning. And it's always a good approach not just to go like, oh, tutorials, I will learn it. And back then when I learned it, there was no YouTube. So it's not always the best idea just to learn by tutorials, but to set yourself a goal. I want to make, every day I want to make a 5-second animation or a 2-second animation or an image or something. Set yourself a goal by using this or that tool, and then you'll be able to learn it faster instead of just looking at tutorials after tutorial. But I think in a couple of months you should be up and running, especially with the beautiful community that is with Cinema 4D and the great tutorials that you have these days. Free tutorials, especially. All right, so okay. I'll be there for questions.
Thank you very much.
Thank you so much.
Robert Hranitzky, everybody. You will be answering questions outside if anybody is interested. Okay.